Man, who would have thought doing introductions would be so hard? This is our third introduction. Please forgive us. I'm just gonna come in like hot right now. So this is our podcast. Yeah, I'm Terrence Reynolds. For those who don't know me, and the people who probably don't know me are well, random strangers on the internet, and Paige entire audience of like coworkers and like large body of friends. Yeah, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. This is my good friend Paige. We've been friends for like probably over 10 years now.
Yeah.
It's a really long time, isn't it? Like so much has changed.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like we grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, but we both live on like two opposite sides of the world right now. So this podcast is being brought to you by a technological experience because I am in Tokyo, Japan right now. Paige, where are you?
I am in Seattle, Washington.
Yeah, so that's about what like a 16 a 15-hour time difference.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah, that's a very long time. So, anyways, so let's talk about this podcast. So this podcast is titled Untitled because we haven't actually thought of a title yet. You feel me? But
It's
so
coming though.
it's
It's
coming. It's
coming.
coming soon. Maybe by episode 10, we will have like an actual title. But this podcast premise is kind of like a book club. So every month we're gonna read a book. We're gonna try to do this every month. If we're really lucky, we can probably do this earlier. But every month we're gonna read a book. And then we're gonna come in this podcast and have a discussion about it. Now I know what you're thinking. Why a month? Like why not every week? Why not every 2 weeks or something like that? It's because I read incredibly slow. Meanwhile, Paige reads like a book a day. So it's gonna take me a month to get through some of these books. And these books is gonna be like a wide variety of topics, mostly nonfiction. I don't know, Paige. Do you read fiction books like stories about like
Mm, Here or there. Like I read fiction probably a couple times a year.
yeah?
Back in high school, I used to read fiction all the time and would read like 20 books in a month,
Yeah.
especially during the summer.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've kind of stopped reading fiction as much. That's something I want to try to get back into though. So maybe we'll have some fiction books here and there, but for the most part, we're gonna keep it a wide variety of nonfiction books.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta be honest. The last fiction book I read is, I think, The Hunger Games. I was clearly in
Oh,
high school the last time I read a fiction book. But we mostly read books that are nonfiction, like business books, marketing books, self-help books, psychology books. And it's probably because our interests kind of align a lot. Paige is she works in tech. I don't know if you feel comfortable with revealing your job, so I'm not gonna like oust you. But she works in tech and she's like very interested in creating a startup one day. And in fact, she's working on her startup product right now. Me, I also work in tech. I work at a startup company here in Tokyo, and I've been trying to build my own tech company for like damn near like a decade. So like a lot of our books is going to probably like revolve around this economics, business, marketing, kind of like categories. But
hmm.
today's book has nothing to do with that. So we're already hitting you with a curveball. Today's book is what, Paige?
So we're reading the book Attached, and this is a great book. It's by Amir Levine and Rachel S.F. Heller.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a guide for adult attachment and the different styles that you might exhibit in a relationship. So it's to help you find and keep love.
This is one heck of a book to start off with, don't you think? At least for me, like we were like prepping for this show, and I'm like, man, this book is like
It's
it's so
heavy.
personal. It's very heavy. Like we kind of have to like source from our own experiences, and I'm thinking in my head like, man, it's gonna be like a I'm gonna get very vulnerable. Like it's gonna be like a therapist conversation right now. Like this is our very first episode. I'm gonna be talking about a lot, at least for me, a lot about my own personal life. I'm gonna try to like
Mhm.
chop some stuff out because I don't want to out people or say too much detail. So I'm gonna leave Paige in charge of the big red edit button because we're gonna be pressing that a lot. Not I don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. This is our first podcast, so we'll
Uh
see. We might. Oh, we might have some bloopers at the end of this. That
huh.
would be kind of funny to see how many times we, have
Messed up.
edits.
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of those. There's gonna be a lot of those. We are not professionals at all. I have no business being in front of a mic because I have no professional training. But that's why it's fun, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a good discussion. I'm excited to talk about love and relationships.
Okay.
So where do you want to start? You want to start? Let's give some background about the book Attached,
Yeah.
as well as some core concepts that our listeners or you can read along. Like you can read the book after the podcast.
Yeah.
Listeners and readers and or whatever will have some some context.
Uh,
Um, So let's start. Well, do you want to start, or would you like me to start? I have some good key points that I think would be interesting, but I think maybe a
Please.
good starting point is to talk about what are the different attachment styles.
Uh-huh.
Um, so there's three, but technically four. So you have your secure attachment style. There is avoidant. There is anxious, and then there's a weird one which is anxious avoidant.
Yeah.
And just for an FYI, I got these stats from the book, which I thought was interesting. 50% of the population is secure, 20% is anxious, 25% is avoidant, and 3 to 5% is the anxious avoidant attachment style. And
Yeah.
we can take turns going a little bit deeper into those different attachment styles, and some of the traits of them. So I'm gonna let you do the first one. Would you like to
Well,
cover secure? Oh,
well,
whatever you like.
let's establish a little bit more of a foundation. So attachment styles in relationships are fundamentally important. So most adults probably aren't familiar what attachment styles are. But Paige kind of kicked it off. There's three main categories of attachment. You have secure, you have avoidant, you have anxious. And these attachment styles it's a very powerful force in a relationship. And if you're not aware of how these attachment styles work and which one you have and your partner have, it can have a tremendous effect in your relationship. Like a lot of relationship issues and a lot of relationship misalignments kind of happen because of these attachment styles. But oftentimes we're not aware of it. So when we get into like arguments with our partners, or we get into arguments with like people we're dating and people who we're married to, et cetera, et cetera, uh, sometimes the argument isn't really about what's happening on the surface. You know what I'm saying? But it's like is this really it's this underlying need of like intimacy and how we view intimacy. So let's just get started with the three main attachment styles. And I'm just gonna like read them off verbatim. So adult attachment styles are broken up into like three main categories, like we mentioned before. There's secure, there's avoidant, and there's anxious. And these categories are determined and based on the way that you and your partner perceive and respond to intimacy in a romantic relationship, which is often parallel with the attachment style found in children. So basically, secure people feel comfortable with intimacy and are usually warm and loving. Anxious people crave intimacy and are often preoccupied with the relationship and tend to worry about their partner's ability to love them back. Avoidant people equate intimacy with a loss of independence and constantly try to minimize closeness. In addition, people with each of these attachment styles differ in these ways: their view of intimacy and togetherness, the way they deal with conflict, and their attitude towards sex, their ability to communicate their wishes, and their expectations from their partner and the relationship. That get it? Is that a good
Yeah,
foundation?
yeah, that's good. I also
Right.
want to add, an easy way to look at attachment styles as well is look at your anxiety levels and your comfortability with intimacy levels. So if you think of a secure person, they have pretty low anxiety about a relationship,
Right.
and they have low avoidance, aka, they're comfortable with intimacy. They don't try to avoid it.
Yeah.
Whereas an anxious person, they have like a high anxiety
Uh-huh.
and lower avoidance. So they're still comfortable with giving that intimacy, but they're anxious about the relationship. And avoidant people have low anxiety and high avoidance. So
Yeah.
they're not really worried about the relationship, but at the same time, they're uncomfortable with intimacy and they try to avoid it by any means, really.
Hmm.
And then I also just want to briefly touch on the anxious avoidant because that's like a mixture of those other two types. And that's
Okay.
where you have high anxiety and high avoidance.
Yeah.
So like not only are you anxious about the relationship and you do have a crave or like this need for intimacy, but you try to avoid it at the same time. And it's
Uh-huh.
it's really weird. It's a really weird combo, and only 3 to 5% of the population has that type of attachment style.
Yeah. So
So the book doesn't really cover the anxious avoidant type that much. It really focuses on the other three because that makes up like what 95% of the population. So
yeah. So let's play a little game with the listeners because I'm pretty sure tons of people are thinking right now, not tons, probably dozens or maybe one or two people who are listening to this podcast is is
yeah, we
thinking,
don't have
yo,
any viewers quite yet.
not yet. We're not on prime time yet, but like they're probably thinking, which attachment style am I? Not me, but like you, as in
Dang.
you, the listener. They,
Yeah.
is that how you say it? Like clearly we're not like at least I'm not a book expert. But so I'm gonna read off like three statements, and whatever statement you identify with the most, that's probably you. So statement number one. I find it relatively easy to get close to others, and I'm comfortable with depending on them and having them depend on me. I don't worry about being abandoned or about someone getting too close to me. I'm not going to reveal which one that is yet, but if you know, you know. Number two, I am somewhat uncomfortable being close to others. I find it difficult to trust them completely, difficult to allow myself to depend on them. I am nervous when anyone gets too close, and often love partners want me to be more intimate than I feel being comfortable with. Okay, so, and here's the final one. I find that others are reluctant to get as close as I would like. I often worry about my partner not loving me or won't want to stay with me. I want to merge completely with another person, and this desire sometimes scares people away. Okay. Okay, so those are three statements. Okay, and drum roll. The first statement is thank you for the drum roll page.
You're welcome.
So the first statement, the very first one, that is the secure attachment style. The second statement is the avoidant attachment style. And then the last statement is the anxious attachment style. Okay. So yeah, like
Yeah.
should we? So what should we talk about next? Should we talk about our attachment styles? Should we give more detail on attachment and where it comes from? What do you think?
Yeah, so I would love to cover the psychology behind the attachment theory.
Yeah,
And from the book, it talks about that, attachment styles, it doesn't originate from one singular source. There's multiple things that can play into, your development of an attachment style. But the main three that I got from the book is number one, your genes.
yeah,
There is a biological aspect to it. Anxious people usually have a specific pattern of a dopamine receptor called DRD2 allele, and that plays into the anxiety. Avoidant people usually have a variant of the serotonin 5 hyphen HT1A receptor.
oh man.
And so those two genes can play a part into your attachment style, which is more of that nature portion. And then there's also a nurture portion. So one other thing that can play a factor into your attachment style is your parent to child connection. So secure people in general typically had sensitive, available, and responsive parents.
Yeah,
Where an anxious person, they had like a flaky parent. Like the person was inconsistent. They were sometimes responsive, sometimes not responsive. And then the avoidant person usually had more of a rigid, distant, and unresponsive parent, and that plays a part even from infancy all the way up until through childhood. That can play a part in your development of an attachment style. And the last thing is your experiences. So if you have like your experiences with your peers as well as in your romantic relationships can also change your attachment styles.
yeah,
And I thought this was interesting. It was a I love stats, I love statistics. So 25 to 30% of the population can change their attachment style. So it's kind of like plastic where it's not stuck, it can be molded, if it's heated up and
yeah.
bent the right way.
I think the book
um
says it can change like maybe every 4 years.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
So if you're in a relationship that's powerful enough and has a long lasting or a deep enough impact, it can definitely change your attachment styles. Which if you're in a secure person, you don't one. We should probably talk about like there's nothing wrong with having any of these attachment styles. It's really
yeah.
how you communicate with them.
I'm glad you
But
said that. Yeah,
if you're a secure person, you are statistically more likely to be happy in relationships and feel more fulfilled, opposed to anxious and avoidant people. So if you're secure and you move over to the other side of the spectrum, you might lose some like some happiness
yeah.
theoretically.
So
And then if you're of anxious or avoidant and you move towards the secure side, you'll gain happiness and fulfillment in your relationship theoretically. So you just put that out there.
so like attachment styles, like, so let's give a little bit more context to this as well. Let's keep in mind that human beings, we're kind of pre-wired to like crave closeness and intimacy with others. Like we are, it's in our natural ability to actually be into a relationship. Like at least under the most ideal circumstances, all human beings will kind of crave being inside of a relationship. But because of life experiences and maybe early childhood experiences, you may, I guess, veer off of that initial desire. So, and to give context to this, so in prehistoric times, people used to rely on each other a lot. because we had no way of protecting ourselves if we were just individuals. But when we like gathered together in tribes, the cavemen and the cave women who survived earlier on are the ones who are able to build strong bonds with others so we can look out for each other. So all of us come from descendants of people, cavemen and cave women who were mostly secure, because back in those days, if you were, I guess, avoidant and you just wanted to go do your own thing, and then like a lion or a bear or a tiger just comes after you like in the middle of the night, and it's a wrap. So you don't get to pass, so they didn't get to pass down their genes. So a lot of the secure people, a lot of maybe even like some of the anxious people, like, we kind of just like continue to, I guess, pass down our genes over time. So a lot of us, a lot of our natural tendencies tend to be secure. But again, like so much of attachment styles are based on our early childhood experiences and our life experiences. So my understanding may be wrong, but I think we come out the womb being secure. But our relationship with our mother and our other parents and our family members is what kind of like push us off of that track to become other attachment styles. Like, let's take, for example, me. Like, I would like to say that at least earlier on, I was avoidant, and a lot of the reasons why I was avoidant is because of, I guess, the environment that I was raised in. So a lot of people become avoidant because they deem that they take control of that independent nature of themselves. Like, and that's probably because at a time within their life, like depending on people wasn't the best way to survive, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physiologically. So we kind of like over time just like just started to do our own thing and just figure things out because that was the best way that we can navigate through life. Now, as I got much older and as I learned to trust and rely on people, I like to believe that I became more secure over time. So, these attachment styles change like every 4 years. And I think probably like recently, I think I would like to say I'm a secure person because I no longer have that fear of trusting people, or I guess have that fear of like getting close to people because
Mhm.
nowadays I feel like I can rely on at least my close friends and the people who I've been in a relationship with.
You can't rely on me, that's for
Oh
sure.
damn,
Oh.
Paige, damn! Like you're gonna make me avoid it again. Don't make me avoid it.
Apologies, apologies. But that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think looking back at my attachment style, I think I used to sometimes teeter back and forth between anxious and avoidant,
yeah.
which sometimes make me believe that I was in that anxious avoidant category, but I could have just been very anxious and then just had like start detaching myself from situations because it's caused so much
And,
anxiety.
and that
Um,
and that's like largely based on like this setting that you're in currently within your lifestyle. I didn't really like explain that at first, but like if you're in like a harsh environment, like you tend to like react the opposite that that a secure attached person would. And you probably become more hyper vigilant. You probably more persistent. So your attachment style would kind of like veer over into the anxious or avoidant like territory. And more peaceful times where you have like your life is more secure and you feel more comfortable with the people around you, you're able to establish those intimate bonds by investing more into the people around you because you feel comfortable in doing so and you see the benefit in doing so. So yeah.
And to like follow up on that, to touch on secure base, I think that's something that
Yeah.
people would like to know about because it comes up in the book where it's exactly what Terrence is describing, having people who are reliable, responsive, and tentative to your needs, like that helps form an environment in which you can safely or feel more safe to move towards a more secure attachment style because
Uh,
you have someone, your secure base, that person who is basically they have your back and you know that they have your back. um uh, Tangent, I was watching a documentary on Netflix called Babies. Really great.
okay.
I didn't know so much about babies, but it also aligns to what we read in this attached book when it comes to having someone who is your secure base and how that enables you to thrive or to try new things. So the experiment goes, there was like they follow these group of mothers and parents, and um they mothers who were more responsive to their baby needs, they saw that the baby was able to go out and explore, like without any like apprehension. They like,
Yeah.
okay, cool, mom's in the corner, she got my back, I'm going to explore this environment. Those babies were secure babies.
Yeah.
But then on the opposite side, there were babies who, every 10 seconds they're looking like, okay, is mom there? Is mom there? And if mom got up and
Anxious.
left, they would start crying. They weren't able to,
Yeah.
explore their surroundings. And so it's having a secure base. And even the babies, going back to the first set of babies that, they were exploring their environments, they were okay even when their mom left the room,
Yeah.
because they knew mom was coming back.
But
And that's important.
talk about the avoidant, because the guess what the avoidant babies do? Like, so when mama leaves the room, the avoidant babies be acting like, yo, like I'm good. I ain't worried about nothing. I'm about to play with my toy blocks and stuff like that, and just like not even recognize that mom left the room. But when they actually test those babies for like cortisol, the stress hormone, these babies are actually
Mhm.
extremely stressed out. And when the mother comes back, those babies exhibit, and I don't want to like, I'm going to foreshadow a little bit. They tend to exhibit, what is it, a deactivating strategy, and a
Yes.
like subtly try to push the mom away when the mother comes back to like reestablish that connection with them.
They're
And
like,
they,
no, we don't want that.
yeah, they kind of act mean and cold. So yeah, that's a great point that you brought up.
Yeah, and actually I went ahead and I drew a diagram of the deactivating strategies as well as activating
You
strategies.
want to introduce it before I show the diagram, or are you going to like talk
Yes,
about
for
it
sure.
as you show the diagram?
So I'm going to talk a bit about it and then I will show the diagram.
Okay.
Um but like the so you have two different, you have the activation and the deactivation strategies that
Yeah.
align with the different systems. So when an anxious person feels like there is a threat to their relationship standing, their attachment system is activated. So one thing is you might excessively try to reestablish connection. So, like for example, maybe your spouse and you got into an argument about something, or your partner and you got into some type of argument, and your partner hangs up the phone, or your partner
Hmm.
says, "You know what? I want to talk to you later." An anxious person would view that as a threat to the relationship,
Yeah.
and they would, the worst things will go through their head, like this person doesn't love me, like they're going to break up with me, this is the end of the relationship, even though that might not be the case.
Yeah.
And they will try to reestablish connection by, for example, calling 20 times in a row, calling 10
Calling,
times in a row,
texting, emailing,
texting, yep,
50
trying to
text messages in
reestablish.
one night.
Just trying to really reestablish, maybe even showing up on your front door, and
Pulling up
who
at their
knows,
workplace, like, yo, what's good? Where you been at? I haven't seen you in
like
a while.
you hung up on me.
Yeah.
um
Okay,
something
what's
else the person
yeah. Go ahead.
the person might also try to withdraw.
Uh,
So they might, say, you know what, this
silent
person,
treatment.
yeah, the silent treatment, or even doing some type of manipulation, such as like you're acting busy when you're not, you're pretending to be unapproachable, you're ignoring their phone calls. You might play tick for tack or have like a little petty war going on where you're like,
Team
well,
petty.
petty. I was gonna say something else, but anyway, where you're like, where you're being really petty, where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I like you took 3 hours to call me back, Terrence. I am not gonna call you back for 3 hours now. I'm gonna avoid your phone calls for 3 hours because I feel like you slighted me.
Okay. I'm cool
Um,
with that.
and another thing, which is which can be very problematic in a relationship, is you might try to make your partner feel jealous. You might try to post some pictures of you at the bar with like a cute other person. You might post some things on social media to make that person feel jealous, which is all from an attachment standpoint or from an anxious standpoint. You're really just trying to establish that reconnection, but
Yeah.
you're doing it in ways that are potentially unhealthy. Whereas an avoidant person, they're the opposite. Like if you are in an argument, like not even argument setting, but like say like you want to take it to the next step of your relationship, you want to hold hands in public, the avoidant person might say, you know what, that's too intimate for me, so I'm going to start avoiding physical closeness. I'm going to keep secrets and keep things a little bit foggy to maintain my independence. I might flirt with others, or they might have this symptom called phantom X, which is where you
Mhm.
kind of like look back at previous relationships and say, that was the relationship I should have been in. Like my ex would never do this, my ex would respect this boundary, my ex this and that. And that's also problematic because you're comparing a relationship that ended for a reason to another relationship that is current that you're having, all because you're fearful of that intimacy
Yeah.
and getting close and
Also,
being vulnerable.
also
So,
acting hostile, like rolling your eyes
oh
whenever
yeah,
someone speaks, looking away, getting up and leaving the room while they're talking, making threats. God, I hope no one's making threats in the relationship. But yeah, making threats like such as I knew we weren't really meant to be together, or I'm better
yeah,
off without you. Like those sort of manipulations, those are a form of protest behavior. Acting busy, or being unapproachable, like she said, like ignoring phone calls, saying you have plans when you don't, and
hmm
trying to make people feel jealous. Like those are all examples of protest behaviors. And when you see those protest behaviors, what you can start doing, because these are activating strategies, you can like help calm them down and try not to like, I guess, buy into the protest behavior, because again, like a lot of times the surface level argument or conflict that you're having is not that. That's an effect, but it's not the actual cause. So when you're talking to someone who's exhibiting these behaviors, the more effectively that you can, like, I guess, calm that down and actually get to the core of the problem, the quicker and the easier it is to resolve and establish like a resolution between you and your partner.